Hello and welcome to episode 130 of Authors Afterword. On this podcast, I talk to an author about one, occasionally more, of their books in detail. And if you find yourself enjoying today's episode, do share it with your friends. So, I'm Charlie Place, and joining me today is Jim C Hines, most recently the author of Kitemaster, though also the author of Goblin Quest, the Magic X Libris series, and I may have pronounced that completely wrong, I don't know. A book for the unfortunately cancelled video game Fable Legends, the book at least wasn't cancelled, and many other books. He is also the author who copied poses of women on the front of fantasy novels to show how over-sexualised and ridiculous they were. Link in the show notes if you haven't seen them. That was in 2012, I believe, and the whole thing went viral. I remember it well. So, back to today's subject, Kitemaster. Nial lost her husband, Jika, a year ago, and it is now time to fashion his kite, a spirit kite that will take his soul into the celestial world, or at least that's what tradition says. Nial's still racked with grief, but she performs the task and her husband sails away. But it doesn't go as it should usually go. Nial is sought as a kitemaster as she's found to be able to control the kites and the winds that blow across the world. She is sought by a band of marauder-seeming people who are going to fight against the Queen. The Queen wants to bring war to the lands that once fought hers, but it will mean tens of thousands put to the death. She needs to be stopped. But Nial doesn't go alone. In releasing Jika's kite, she finds her grandmother's coming back to the world to join her. Hello, Jim.
Hello. Thank you, Charlie.
You are very welcome to be here. It's great to have you on. I struggled coming up with this book summary, I have to say. I believe you struggle too. Is that correct?
I did. This, more than pretty much any book I've written, people ask me, okay, so what's the elevator pitch? And I wish I had one. It's one of the reasons we had a little harder time selling and marketing this book. It doesn't boil down to a simple one-line summary.
Can I ask you what the process was like in selling the book then? How long did it take?
Oh boy. I've been working on the idea for Kitemaster in one form or another for about 20 years. It started as a short story. That one sold very easily. The editor loved it. And then I decided I wanted to keep exploring and to write a book-length version. And I wrote it as a book, and I went back and rewrote it as more of a middle grade book. We didn't have any luck finding a home for the middle grade, so I rewrote it again as adult fantasy. My agent and I, when we were trying to sell it to my normal publisher, the publisher was in the process of being bought out by a new company. My editor, although I didn't know it at the time, was in the process of retiring. And long story short, the book kind of fell through, got turned down, and we had to go broader trying to find a home for it. We eventually did sell it to Arc Manor. They're the ones who put out the version that you got to see. They have been great to work with. I love the cover art. You know, the cover is just beautiful. They've been very responsive, very good, but it was a long process, and I still don't have a pitch line for it.
I mean, if you're getting by without one, that's okay, isn't it? It's got so much in it.
More or less, yeah. It would be nice when somebody asks me about it to not have to say, okay, sit down. Do you have 10 minutes? But yeah, we're doing all right.
You said about the short story. Were there any parts, or what were the parts that you had included in your middle grade version and your other versions that were included in this book? I suppose beyond the obvious of the kite aspect.
Right. The basic concept of this world where the wind never stops and the magic is all sort of wind and kite based, that's been there all along. The character of Nial has changed a bit. She was younger in the short story, older in the first draft, younger in the middle grade draft, and then ended up being 21 years old for the final version. And she's always had that companion spirit kite, Ossa. Developing Ossa into her grandmother's spirit and really building her character, that was new for the book. But she's also a companion in one form or another. all the drafts.
Right, so yeah, it's been a long character development for her then. For Nial, I mean.
Yes. The other thing that's been consistent from day one is trying to explore that sense of wonder. The short story, when I was writing it, there were moments. I mean, it sounds a little egotistical to say this as the writer, but where I would write it and just think, oh, that's really cool. I love that. I want to do that. I want to fly on a scout kite or, whatever it is they're doing. I tried to lean into that for the book. I wanted every chapter to have something that readers would go, oh, wow, and just imagine or daydream or fantasize about, whether it's flying on the kite ships or seeing the dragons come down from the stars for the first time. I wanted a lot of that wonder in the book.
I've noticed that you've talked about wonder in this book. You said about the ships, and I know they weren't necessarily there at the start. And I've read your blog post, and I'll include the link again. I'll include links, listeners. There's me thinking, oh yeah, kite ships, you have enough kites, they're big enough, that'll work. I'm kind of fully into the fantasy world that you're building, but right. I'm definitely not thinking further than that. I think I was just like, yes, let's enjoy this book. I'm with this author's story.
Good.
But I found that you did a ton of working out with physics. Is that correct? You looked into how it would work.
I did a fair amount because ideally I kind of approached it the same way as you. We put enough kites on there, the ships fly. This is awesome. Let's go with it. And then as I was writing, started to think more about, okay, how would this actually work? For a kite to fly, you not only have to have the kite with the panels catching the wind, you need to be anchoring it with the line, and you're holding it and it's resisting the wind, and that's what's giving it the lift. A ship that's flying through the air doesn't have that anchor, that resistance. How is this going to work? And so I started drawing out diagrams of, okay, what would the angles of the kites have to be to sort of balance out lift with forward movement? If we add sails to help steer, we've got a big old banner, kind of like the tail beneath the ship to provide some drag. So I worked it out the best I could. And realistically, in our world, no, a kite ship is not going to fly. As far as I know, I'm not a PhD physicist, but I got it as close as I could. And then that's where the Kitemasters come in. They provide that extra bit of lift and resistance and steering around the physics of it. So even in Nial's world, if you don't have a Kitemaster there, the kite ship is not going to fly, or at least it's not going to fly for very long. But yeah, I figured science fiction, fantasy, there are going to be people who they want to know how this works. They want to start figuring out, okay, so if the wind velocity is this and the kite is this big and the ship weighs this much, like I said, I can't get 100% of the way there, but I wanted to get as close as I could to try and help with the suspension of disbelief and just, no, okay, he's thought about it. I can go with this. We can get in and enjoy the story now.
Sure. From chapter 1, and particularly in chapter 1, you grabbed me with this story because you've got, I believe it is chapter 1, there is a lot about grief in Nial's life, and you are setting up the story and her background, and you do it really, really well. The pacing and how you've written it and the emotion, and yes, it's very well done. And I wanted to ask you about that, like the grief that is throughout the book of people losing their family. Obviously, you've got, as said, Nial losing her husband, but you've also got Kavaya, the queen. To some extent, we do see about that later on in the book. Also, obviously, we've got the presence of Ossa. And yeah, can you talk about including grief in the book?
The grief, Nial being a widow and working through that was a later addition to the final version of the book. That wasn't in the earlier attempts. And that came after my first wife had died of cancer. She got sick in late 2018. We did about 9 months of chemo and treatment, and she passed away in August of 2019. And like a lot of authors, I write myself and my experiences into the book. So since I was working through my own grief, one of the ways to work on that was to sort of put it into the book and have Nial struggling with some of the same things that I had gone through. The disease that kills her husband is never named, but it's essentially the same cancer that took Amy. And yeah, it's hard. It's sort of trying to rebuild your life after that, trying to figure out how do we go forward from here. And and you do. I mean, you have to keep living. And there are ups and downs. The first time Niall sees a starfall and she's watching it and it's beautiful and awe-inspiring. And they're up there on the ship and she's with Xao and Vikaan, her two new friends, and she loves it and she's happy. And then she feels this sort of guilt and sadness for being happy because, well, how can I be happy if I lost my husband? And this would have been better if he was here with me. And it's messy. I wanted to show her. I don't think you ever, quote unquote, get over it.
Yeah.
But you move forward with your life. It's been 6 years now. I got married again earlier this year. That's been great. It's life moving forward. But it's a bumpy road getting there. And I wanted to bring that into the book. I wanted to be as honest and open with those emotions as I could. And hopefully I did it well. That's not really my place to say, but yeah, I tried to be honest with it.
Well, if it's kind of my place to say, or one of the places to say as a reader, yeah, it's one of the best portrayals of grief I think I've read in a book. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm very sorry I read about Amy, and I'm sorry to hear it.
Yeah.
We've mentioned Ossa joining Nial, and I found this to be really interesting because I think you've mentioned somewhere, and I can't remember where it is, you talked about maybe Studio Ghibli adapting your novels. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I found that really interesting because when you introduced Ossa, I had a very Spirited Away like picture in my head. So I was like, okay, yeah, I can see this working. But yeah, I wanted to ask you more about including Ossa in the way that you did, because something that occurred to me as something to think about myself when I was reading your book was how the story might have been different if it had been Nial's husband, for example. And I know later on you broached that question at the end of the book, which
right.
I loved so much. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you about, incorporating the grandmother and the significance of it.
And I should clarify too, Studio Ghibli has not approached me or reached out or anything.
For shame.
I know that's just my fantasy. I would absolutely love to see this particular book. And, if they're listening, hit me up. But yeah, because you're right. Including Jika, her husband, as that companion, I don't think would have worked. I don't think she was ready. But I wanted her to have that companion, to have that sort of guidance and support, just to not be alone. And I also wanted to explore death a little. I wanted to explore what happens after in this world. Because when they fly the spirit kites up into the night river, it's not just a ritual. It's literally, this is the next phase. This is where they go. Nial doesn't even really believe that in the beginning. She's going through the motions, but until she has that awakening of her gifts as a kite master and connects with Jika's spirit kite, she doesn't realize it's real. So jumping ahead, the grandmother, Ossa, I wanted to think about, okay, what does that mean? Her grandmother died at the age of, I don't remember exactly, say about 70. So is this Ossa as a 70-year-old woman? Your life isn't just the moment you died. It's everything. It's the sum total of all 70 years. So getting to write Ossa as both the 70-year-old with all of the experience, but also the teenager with all of the obnoxious smartass commentary, and even the little kid who's having a blast flying around as a kite, and the middle-aged experience where she's known love, she's known family, she's in that sort of transitional, and getting to explore all of that character together. It's almost like I'm slipping into Doctor Who and getting into wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. It's an entire timeline compressed into one kite, which actually was another piece of that sense of wonder, is just how cool would it be to have all of that person, all of that personality and change all at once. And for Nial, it helps to anchor her. It helps to keep her from feeling alone. It's still her story. She still has a lot of very challenging things to overcome. But whether it's a big save the world quest or dealing with grief, it's a lot harder to do alone. And it's important to have help and support and people who are there for you. And Nial connects with some other friends, and she's had others, but Ossa was sort of the first support, the first, I've got your back, you can do this.
Did you have to do a lot of planning or character development in your head before you could write her, or was she quite easy to write?
I mean, 20 years of process on this, but
Sure.
Ossa was one of the easier ones because I knew the kind of attitude I wanted her to have. I knew I wanted her to be sort of spunky and smartass and defiant and also very loving underneath that. I think a lot of the time we protect love. We don't want to be too open with it. We don't want to expose it because it makes us vulnerable. You know, it's easy to get hurt. So we talk around it and we maybe give hints, but we kind of hide a lot of that deeper emotion. And Ossa, she's over that. You know, she's lived, she's died, she's got a better sense of what matters. And so she's much more open with loving and caring about her granddaughter and her husband she encounters at one point, all of her family.
I liked how you incorporated, oh gosh, I've lost his name now, the grandfather.
Kappa. Yeah.
Yes, that's it, yes. I like how you incorporated him into the story of Ossa being there, and because I often thought, oh, she's not able to spend much time with him, and you'd feel that she should. And then you see kind of the wider picture, it's ever opening out to the reader, I mean, of what you're trying to do, which was interesting to see in the book, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she came back for Nial.
Mm.
You know, this was what she needed to do. She knew, or she had some sense of what was coming, and she wanted to be there for her granddaughter. But yeah, I wanted to have that reunion with Kappa, with her husband. I wanted that scene of just seeing how much they loved each other and seeing Kappa, that sort of happy, sad, loving reunion, even if it's fairly brief in the book. I mean, it could be a source of bitterness that, oh, you came back and now you're going to run off with our granddaughter and not hang out with me. Rude. But there is genuine love between those two. And they were married for probably 50 years or so. They know. They've been through the ups and downs. They've been through loss. And they are both very much on the same page of, yep, you need to go take care of our granddaughter. I can't. So go get them. But yeah, I love a lot of the family relationships in this book, actually. I like that Nial has a loving family. They're not perfect. Her little brother's a punk, but they genuinely love and care about each other and support each other and want to be there for each other. You know, we get a lot of messed up families in fiction, a lot of broken dynamics, which is also important. But sometimes I also like just seeing a genuinely good, caring family.
Yeah, you've got a very good sense of, well, found family, because obviously she's got some
That too.
people that have been in her life before, And then also she's got these new people. She's got Xao, she's got Vikaan. He's quite quiet, but still he's there. To some extent, I think we can say, would you say Sharot? Is that how you'd pronounce his?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, eventually, yes.
They have some issues. I usually emphasize the second Sharat, but I also don't really hear things out loud in my head. So sometimes I'll write an entire book and not even realize how a name is pronounced. But yeah, even Captain Wolf to an extent, that's a little more distant, but they all sort of get thrown into this crisis together and they bond. But Xao and Vikaan are the two closest, definitely.
Yes, yeah. Well, I did want to ask about them and I put them together in my question. Can you tell us more about them themselves, I suppose, if we isolate them from everybody else at the moment and just more say about them themselves? Yeah, Xao and Vikaan.
Xao is so much fun. He's a Moknan. They're a different race, but he's, as you can kind of hear in the name, he's got some similarities to monkeys, just in the way he climbs around and the agility and the fur and the tail, of course. And he's very much a trickster. He is very much living in the moment, having fun, breaking any rules if he decides, well, there's something else I need to do. And in a lot of ways, he's joyful. He's very good at finding the joy in the moment. And he's got his own tragic backstory because it's a book. They all have to have their backstories. But this is how he's moved on, is I'm going to live for the joy. I'm going to find the happiness. He probably needs to go to therapy and deal with that. But in the meantime, he's just a blast. And he pulls Nial and everyone around him along on that journey. Whereas Vikaan, he's the prince. He's the son of Queen Kavaya, and he knows his mother is broken. The queen has lost her husband. The queen has lost one of her sons. She was not a good person before this, and now she's just very vindictive and very angry and determined to conquer and punish. And yeah, not a good person. And Vikaan, I wrote him almost as autistic. You know, some of the struggles with the social, with the interaction, you know, very uncomfortable. He gets overstimulated very easily. He gets very fixated on his certain interests, one of which is seeing patterns, particularly in the stars. And the stars on this world aren't like in ours. They're not this field of fixed points that we kind of spin, and so they slowly move through the night. There's a reference, it's called the Night River, and it literally is this sort of river of stars that flows through the sky. And when it's flowing slowly, it's a lot wider and broader, and it covers more of the sky. When it's rougher, it goes more rapidly and more narrowly, and you get a brighter stripe of stars. And every once in a while, one of them sort of spins away from the night river and falls. You know, and that's starfall. And I guess if we're getting into spoilers, the queen wants to weaponize that. The queen wants to use all of these kite masters and their control of the winds to take these falling stars and guide them. It's almost like a nuclear option. We're going to crash this star onto the capital city of our enemies. Obviously, the stars in this world are not as big as the stars in ours. The problem is nobody knows when starfall is going to happen, and you have to do a lot of preparation if you're going to try and control it. But Vikaan can see it. He can see the patterns and he can watch them, and he can recognize that one there, that one is going to stray. So that's why he ends up running away. So his mother can't use him to weaponize the stars, essentially. So he's feeling very alone. He's feeling a lot of grief, not just for his father and his brother, but also for his mother. He's very young. He is scared. So he and Xao and Nial, I'm not going to say that they're broken because they're not, but they're definitely wounded. And I think they find each other, and that's one of the things that pulls them together is caring for each other and helping each other heal and get through all of this.
On Starfall, it's an interesting concept. And you've also obviously then got the serpents and the dragons, which I thought was
Yes,
particularly interesting because dragons in particular, we hear a lot about them. We do see them, and I know that at the end
eventually. Yes,
effectively a conversation with one. Nial has a conversation, but you've also kept some distance with them so that they do feel godlike a lot of the time. Can you talk about your choices with the dragons? And yeah, I suppose if we say the dragons rather than serpents more, because I think that's more,
yeah.
I want to say epic as such.
The cloud serpents are more a part of Nial's world. They fly, they live in the clouds, they spend their whole lives in the air. So they're really cool, but they're a part of life. You see them eating lightning and dancing together. The dragons have a much more mythical status. The dragons live among the night river. They're up with the stars, so you don't see them. Even Niall, when she's up on one of the kite ships and she's got a spyglass and she's watching the first starfall that they see, and the dragons, they eat the stars. You know, when a star falls, they strike the star and break it apart and they consume the pieces before it strikes the earth. And they're watching this, and even through the spyglass, all Niall sees are these little darting shadows that they're so far away. It looks, I think I described them as like an eyelash that just sort of darts across her field of view, which is still really cool and really exciting for her to see. But I wanted to save them. I wanted to build up some of that mystery. Even the magic that kite masters use, they call it the dragon's gift. There are these legends that a dragon was the first one to give this magic to the people. You see at one point the shed skin of a dragon. They call it the glass bridge, and it's sort of a bridge across this great big chasm. And it's the first time you start to get a sense of the scale of these things that are hundreds and hundreds of meters long and just enormous. But yeah, I wanted the mystery. I wanted to keep the dragons for the climax. We're not going to see this. We're not going to spoil the suspense. This isn't a dragon book. It's not a dragon riders thing. And they needed to have that separate mythical status.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not like the typical dragon book, but no, it was interesting. I'm going to ask you, I think, about that world building.
Sure.
You're very quick to get to who the bad guy is, and you have about a chapter of world building, and then you get quickly to the story at hand and leave the rest of the world building and the character development to continue once they're en route, which I really enjoyed. You know, you get straight into what's going on. So I wanted to ask about like your decisions in the world building, the hows and whys of the plotting and the structure.
Well, there's definitely a lot. And kind of like I said earlier, it started with the idea that I want magic kites and I want this sort of never-ending wind, and everything spiraled from there. I was like, okay, so what sort of technologies do we have? What sort of music do we have? Probably a lot of wind-based instruments, along with sort of going back to that sense of wonder, what would be really cool? The glass bridge, having this bridge across a chasm that's this glassy, iridescent dragon skin that was shed and left behind. That's really cool. I'll have to figure out how to make it work, but I definitely want that. It wasn't a portal fantasy where I could take somebody from our world and put them in and do all of the world building, seeing it through their eyes for the first time. When you pluck Lucy out of England and into Narnia, you get to see it from her eyes, and you can do a lot of the world building that way. But this is Niall's world. At least some of it she's used to. This is normal. Kite masters and wisps controlling the wind, the different types of kites, you know, the signal kites, the alarm kites. Even the kite ship is, oh, well, we don't see that every day. It's pretty cool, but that's what you do. Sort of like seeing a helicopter fly overhead for us. But Niall is also very much a small town girl. She hasn't been really beyond her village. So once I get her out of there, once I get her on the kite ship and flying around and seeing the bigger world, then we can start to explore more and get into the politics, the physical, the mountains, the desert, the forests. We can start to explore the cities and see everything from the big details, like how do you build up wind walls to protect your crops, to little things like they arrive at one city at night and there are silk crickets that live outside the city, and they fly on wisps of silk thread, and they have this sort of blue bioluminescence to them. And it's just this, for Nial and for me, this cool detail of, oh, wow, that's neat. I would want to see that. And it's based a little bit on, I think it's in New Zealand that they've got a cave that has bioluminescent worms that you can go in and see. And that's cool. I'm going to make them crickets. I'm going to make them fly on silk. I'm going to have one get tangled in Xao's tail just so he can, was it the tail or was it the ear? It might have been the ear. Something on him was glowing blue at one point. But just throwing in details like that as I go and discovering it with Nial. When they get to the capital city and seeing it built up on this cliffside, and it's almost split, like the upper half of the city and the bottom half, and then the kite ships dock in the cliff itself. There was a lot. World building was definitely an important part of the book because I wanted the world to make sense. I wanted it to feel magical. And that meant not just the big things like flying kite ships and dragons, but also the little details of the music the wind makes as it blows over the cave mouths, and the wisps and the kitemasters who can control the wind can actually play the caves like a musical instrument. Does that really add to the plot? Probably not. But it makes the world feel more real and more magical. I guess that was the long answer.
That's fine. No, I think it's fascinating finding out about world building. No, that's really interesting then. It makes me want to think like how it would be if you'd used a different point of view to tell the story and things like that. That's just me wondering, yeah.
Yeah. 20 years and more drafts than I can count. I'm not going and rewriting it again.
Yeah. Oh God, no. You don't need to.
If Studio Ghibli does pick it up, I would be happy to write a sequel for them. I'm just saying.
I have questions about that. Yeah, no. Something about, and you've mentioned the blue on Xao, but I noticed that you have people and elements attached to Nial's wrist a lot. You've got Ossa's kite tail, that's obviously always around her. You've got Xao's tail, he often puts it around her. And there's the concept of the wedding bracelet. I suppose I wanted to ask if that's something that you thought about, because it could just be me going, oh, I've seen a connection.
No, that's interesting. That was not conscious or intentional.
Okay.
I think for Ossa, having her line loop around Nial's wrist was just sort of the simplest way to go with that. Xao, he uses his tail, and that's wrapping it around her wrist is sort of the equivalent of holding her hand. And the wedding bracelet, honestly, the deep thought beyond that was I didn't want to do wedding rings. So It's like, okay, what else can we do? We'll do a bracelet. But that's true. There's sort of at least 3 different recurrences of closeness demonstrated by circling the wrist. Yeah, I would love to take credit and say I had something deeper going on there, but not this time.
No, I thought it was interesting because I was seeing it obviously in the kind of support, friendship aspect, family.
And now that I think about it, my wife, Jen, has a tendency to sort of grab me not by the hand, but by the wrist too. I mean, I had written the book before. I'm going to have to think about this now.
Something in your subconscious, maybe.
Yeah. I have a wrist fetish. I don't know.
We won't go into that possibility here, no.
No, different podcast.
That said, on the laughing note, I did want to ask, you balance very well the sadness and the difficulties with humour. Really well done. You've got Xao, obviously. He's the main comic support, I suppose we could say, but then you've definitely got Ossa there, who's brilliant. And I did find something that kind of backed up what I was wondering when I was looking at what you talked about with your books. You said you know that you need to keep a reader who may not find the jokes funny as well, which I thought was really interesting, that you're always thinking about that. So I suppose I just want to ask generally about incorporating the humour. And yeah, that really.
I've always loved making people laugh. Or trying to, at least. Sometimes it works better than others. And humor, I think, is important and powerful. It's a part of who we are. I mean, even in the darkest times, people are making jokes. It's one of the ways we survive. A friend of mine, when I was 16, was killed in a car accident. And
Okay.
a few of us were hanging out together that night when we found out. And we ended up spending a lot of that evening, obviously grieving, and there was crying. But there was also remembering and joking and laughing, which, on the one hand, that sounds awful. So your friend just died and you're laughing. Well, yeah, we're remembering things. We're sharing jokes. We're connecting, and we're trying to get through it. So there's that human element, that this is part of who we are. This is part of how we survive. And from a storytelling perspective, from a craft perspective, humor and sadness or tragic or darkness, they can work really well together. Each one strengthens the other through contrast. One of the best examples I've seen, and I've got to find a better example because Joss Whedon is problematic in various ways, but one of the things he does very well is that contrast of humor and tragedy. In the movie Serenity, when the character of Wash dies, you have that humorous scene of I'm a leaf in the wind, almost immediately followed by that very sudden graphic death. The death is even more powerful because, wait a minute, no, I was just laughing. This was funny a second ago. Or scenes where, and this is maybe a little more common, where you see the characters who are in the midst of that grief and tragedy, and then something happens and it cracks them up.
Yeah.
Not quite hysterics, but it breaks the grief. It breaks the darkness and brings some relief, playing them off of each other, playing the humor and the darkness together. I find, at least, it makes them both stronger. And I find that stories that there's never any humor, they don't feel believable to me.
I get that. Yeah. You surprised me. I didn't know Wash dies. I haven't seen Serenity yet.
Oh, crap.
No, that's fine. You
did say that we were doing spoilers in this.
Yeah, that's very true. No, that's very true. I got to the end of, was it episode 14? Is that the last one? I think it is.
13 or
13
or something,
14.
yeah.
Yeah, one of those. And I said, God, there's only the movie left. I'm waiting. And I've been waiting. And I haven't watched it. So it's totally my fault. You've actually kind of given me a reason to go and watch that Gorham movie. But no, yeah, I agree. I think humour does really help. And I know that when I've had times of grief and just bad things, I've sometimes said things where I'm like, gosh, that was inappropriate. And at the same time, it's helped.
Like medical professionals, nurses who are working with people who are sick and dying, some of the humor is horrible. You'd look at it from the outside and think, these are terrible human beings. I was like, no, these are human beings who are caring for people and doing everything they can in what is sometimes a very tragic environment. And this is how they're coping and getting up and doing it the next day. There are jokes that are not necessarily my place to make as an outsider, but when you're within that environment or within that group or whatever, yeah, it's part of survival. It's part of coping. I wrote a short story years and years ago. I had gotten an invitation to contribute something to a humor anthology. And a writer friend of mine was dealing with cancer at the time, talking about humor as a coping mechanism. So I said, well, for this funny anthology, I'm going to write about cancer. I don't recommend that. That was kind of stupid. But at the end, I loved the story. I loved that balance of, I'm not going to shy away from cancer as this horrible, horrible thing, but I'm also going to have some bits and some scenes that are, I hope, laugh out loud funny. And I remember being terrified when I sent it to the editor and the editor writes back, it's like, oh wow, I think it was his father. My father died of cancer. And I'm like, oh crap. It's like, no,
Yeah.
no, he would have loved this. I did a reading and first hand that goes up after I read the story is like, yeah, I think maybe it was my mother. She's actually in the hospital with cancer. I was like, oh, damn it. It's like, no, no, can I send this to her? And I found out later because I gave him the manuscript that I had read from and he sent it to them. And his parents read the story together in the hospital and they just laughed. And I don't know, the power of being able to do something that for someone in the hospital, either struggling with cancer or they're watching your loved one, and to be able to give them a break and let them laugh and let them have a moment of light is
Mm.
just so powerful.
You've made me think. A couple of years ago, my partner and effectively me, because I knew him, we lost a friend who was too young to go, and he had arranged his funeral. And the last song that we heard was "Another One Bites the Dust." Yeah, so being fun even there, So yeah, that's what we said goodbye to him on. Completely different topic now.
Okay.
You've got these, I'm going to call them old oral history texts, little kind of pieces that you've got in between some of the chapters. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think there's only like 2 or 3 of them.
I think 4, but I'd have to go back and double check.
4? No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, no.
Okay.
I was just asking about you including them, really.
It was another piece of the world building. It was a way to add some lore and some history that Nial wouldn't necessarily have directly. Also, it was just kind of fun to write. One of them is told as sort of a parable. 1 or 2 of them are poems or songs. And it was a way to break things up. It was a way to do something a little different. And it was a way to add a little more flavor and depth to the world.
No, I liked it. I liked it. It wasn't something I'd expected to see either, so that was quite a nice, like, oh, okay, we're going to do this different thing for a bit. I found more and more that I'm talking to authors, especially at the moment, and they're very attached to their characters. I was actually just editing one a few days ago, and we got on to how she dreams and thinks about the characters for ages, actually. But yeah, they dream about them, they're with them all the time, and I'm wondering if you feel like anything like that yourself, because I know that plotting is the thing that you start with, but your characters do seem very important to you.
They are. I don't know that I necessarily dream about them,
Sure.
but I'm starting a new book now, and my first drafts are terrible. They're crap. They're when I figure out what is this story. But yeah, I'm spending a lot of time not so much outlining plot details as figuring out who are these 2 people? What do they love? What are they scared of? What makes them happy? What are the flaws? What are the things they're struggling to overcome? How do they interact with animals? How do they get along with their roommate? And yeah, I want the characters to feel real, like real people with strengths and weaknesses and flaws and everything that goes with it. I'm not one of those writers that the characters, quote unquote, tell me the story and I'm just jotting it down.
Yeah.
I'm still in charge. But yeah, I want the characters to feel real. And I do discover sometimes that if I feel blocked, if I feel stuck on something, it's a character issue. I found even way back when I was writing the Goblin books, that was my first trilogy. I remember a scene that I was stuck. And it's, again, first draft, so it was crap anyway. So I just started writing, and Jig the Goblin looked up at the author and said, "This is stupid. Why are you having us do this?"
Oh, that sounds brilliant, though.
And the author said, "Well, it's in the outline. I need you to get to this." And Jig said, "Yes, but there is no way in hell that I would do that. There's a dragon down there. I'm not going in there." And just having that almost dialogue on the page with the character, it helped things click for me that you're absolutely right, because you are very smart and also a coward. There's no way you would do this unless you had no other choice, or the other choice was even worse. And then Jig looked up and said, "Oh no, what are you going to do?" And the author said, I'm going to give you something worse to make this the better choice, and proceeded to write the rest of the scene from there. But it was the character. It was the character I was blocked on because I wasn't being true to who Jig was. And writing that bit of dialogue and breaking the fourth wall, that's how I got unblocked.
Well, I completely get you saying it's crap. Don't get me wrong, I get that completely. But I would definitely read a novella like that. That'd be brilliant.
Maybe I'll do one as an extra one of these days.
No, it sounds brilliant. Oh, yeah, the fourth wall, the author. Oh, that's cool. Right. Queen Kavaya, I think you pronounced her name as. She's taken away at the end by all the kites. And you leave this open to interpretation in a way, because I wasn't sure exactly what it meant, because I think she disappears. Did that have meaning to you? Did you have an idea of what's gone on here?
That was left intentionally ambiguous, yes.
Okay.
I knew I didn't want to just kill her, but I knew that she had to go. I have some ideas, but I like it being ambiguous. I like that sense of, was she just taken back into the sky? Does that mean she's dead? I think so, but it's more kind of like an Obi-Wan Kenobi death where he just fed. You have seen Star Wars, right?
Most of it. Or rather, yes,
Okay.
I have seen all of them. I can't remember them all completely, however.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm not spoiling Obi-Wan Kenobi now.
Sure.
It was intentionally ambiguous. I mean, you can almost see it as a happy ending in some ways because it's Kavaya joining her husband and her lost son and leaving Vikaan behind, but in this world, she'll see him again. You can also see it as punishment. It's like, no, we just erased your ass. You are gone. I think personally, I lean a little more toward the former, that it's where she was just taken away and moved along the next step of her journey. But I want it ambiguous. I want to let people take what they want from that.
Interesting. I'm thinking about that in terms of my next question here. No, I think I'm still going to ask it.
Okay.
So, this is a standalone book. I know you said that, but I don't know. I think I agree with that. And also, I can't help but think there is space for another one. I'm wondering if you'd ever consider a second book.
I would consider it. I think I would probably want to do a new story with new characters in the same world.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot more adventures that Nial and Xao and everybody could have. But this was the big one. They've saved the world. They've done their thing. Let's go into one of the other kingdoms now. Let's explore that piece of the world. Maybe this time follow a wisp, someone whose magic isn't as powerful, so they have to be more creative about it. I don't have a particular idea in mind. I don't have characters. I don't have plots. And I've already got another book that I'm contracted for that's going to take me the next year to do. But yeah, I would not close the door on it. I hate to be crass, but some of it is also financial because
Sure.
just got married. We bought a house. I have a mortgage. As much as I love Arc Manor and working with them, they're a smaller publisher. And if Daw is able to pay me much more money for a different book, yeah, I've got 2 kids and 2 stepkids. Yeah, this is a job as well as a passion. On the other hand, yeah, if an idea comes to me or if something changes, I could see coming back to this. I love the world. I would love to go back there and play some more. I would feel sad writing another book without Xao in it, at least. Maybe he could be the bridge.
Yes. Well, he's your favourite character, isn't he? So that could work.
He kind of is, yeah. I loved him.
Right, so I think no, I don't think, I know, because you've just said it. Your book that you're working on, tell us about it.
Okay, it's called Unchosen Ones, but that title may change. I'm not fully married to that yet. So, at the end of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the kids have spent decades in Narnia, and then they come back to our world and they're kids again.
Yep.
It's like no time has passed. And I keep thinking how messed up that would be. You've lived this whole life. You're an adult now, and you're stuck in this 12-year-old body. So Unchosen Ones is 2 characters who have gone off into a portal fantasy. They've lived an entire lifetime over there, and then they've come back, and now they're 18 again. They're in college. And it's like, I don't even remember how to do this. I was a king. I've been on adventures. I could do magic. And now I'm supposed to go to English Composition 101 and hang out in my dorm room. So it's a story about coming to terms with what comes after. And also plot stuff, some elements from that other world follow them back, and there's fighting and conflict and love story, and it should be a fun adventure. But yeah, the heart of it is, how do you adjust to coming back to the real world after a lifetime in Magic Land?
Sounds super. I love the concept.
I think we pitched it as Chronicles of Narnia meet 17 again.
I think that's an excellent concept. That's a really great thing to do. I've never heard of anyone doing anything like that either. Well, yeah, okay, you've said 17 again. People kind of do that aging concept, but not what you're talking about, no.
Hopefully it'll be something new, or at least a new take on something we've had in the genre for a while.
I'm looking forward to it. Get to writing it. That'd be brilliant. Yeah, can't wait. That's brilliant. Jim, this has been wonderful having you today. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you for our wonderful conversation. And I'm going to say thank you for spoiling Serenity, actually, for me, because it means I am actually going to get off my arse, go watch the damn movie now, and stop, leaving it and leaving it and leaving it. So, yeah, thank you.
Oh, you are very welcome, and thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
I do hope you enjoyed this episode. Do join me next time. And if you have a moment to spare, please do leave a rating and or review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Podcast Addict. Thank you. Authors Afterword, episode 130, was recorded on the 23rd of June and published on the 13th of October 2025. Music and production by Charlie Place.